suicide bombing looks bad. A drone bombing,
it's not just aesthetics. It's not just aesthetics.
Well, how is it not aesthetics?
Because suicidal people are undeterrable. So jihadists are undeterrable.
Having said all of this, Sam Harris would never discuss Islam with Muslim people. Have you ever seen Sam Harris discuss Islam with Muslim people? In fact, I've challenged him many times. I'm not even going to waste my breath.
And you know, these Islamophobe, atheist, Western supremacists like Sam Harris throws out these old and dusted talking points against Muslims. And by the way, people know that this link between suicide bombings and Muslims is completely false. It's just simply a completely false concept propagandized by Western mainstream media. Islam has absolutely no room for suicide and definitely not to kill innocent civilians. Anyway, you know, Sam Harris is making the case that suicide bombing is more dangerous than drone strikes, which is a joke to suggest in comparison to how sophisticated drone attacks are against intended and unintended targets, right? And, you know, to justify nuclear attacks. Assalamu alaikum. So I came across this reaction video by Mohammed Hijab discussing a conversation between Russell Brand and Sam Harris about Islam and Muslims. Now, Russell Brand is a figure that is in the spotlight at the moment with regards to certain allegations against him pertaining to sexual assault and so on and so forth. And he has admitted that he had a, you know, promiscuous past. But in essence, with regards to his content that he offers at the moment, well, for a long time now, he has been speaking, you know, about certain truths against powerful, you know, entities and figures and so on. And especially against mainstream media, who we understand is quite the powerful voice, you know, in the modern era. And for him to speak about Islam and Muslims is, I think, obviously very interesting. And I believe Mohammed Hijab has the same, you know, feel about it. And also, particularly, he speaks while he's conversing with Sam Harris, who we know is a, you know, well, an atheist, but also an Islamophobe and perhaps a Western supremacist. So let's take a look and see what's the reaction.
One of the only interviews I've seen Russell Brand speak about Islam and about Muslim people. And there are two kind of timestamps in particular which I looked at in his discussion with Sam Harris, which I think are pertinent. So let's look at the first one and then react to it together.
Right, like, and suicide bombing.
So it's just aesthetics, really.
No, it's not.
A suicide bombing looks bad. A drone bombing,
it's not just
nice.
aesthetics. It's not just aesthetics.
Well, how is it not aesthetics?
Because suicidal people are undeterrable. So jihadists are undeterable. If the best thing that can happen in an operation is that you die while conducting it, you are the perfect weapon. That's
why would you make that
I just have to hammer this home.
Go on.
When you're talking about the possibility like of something like nuclear terrorism or biological terrorism, that, you know, where someone tries to weaponize smallpox and kill 100 million people.
Let's just mention that nuclear terrorism is not hypothetical. It already happened 50 years ago. Underwritten
I won't
by
call that,
secularism.
I won't call that nuclear terrorism.
Or nuclear, I don't know.
There was certainly a first
I bet
use
if you were in Nagasaki that day, semantics wouldn't be your primary concern. What should we call that thing? Ow, my teeth!
So before we see the reaction of Mohammed Hijab on the discussion between Russell Brand and Sam Harris, I thought I'd add my comments on this conversation. So for those of you who might not understand exactly what Russell Brand and Sam Harris is talking about, basically Russell Brand asks Sam Harris, how is drone bombing or drone strikes, which is typically associated with Western aggression in war or conflict, not different or even worse than suicide bombing, which is now falsely associated or termed on Muslims. You know, mainstream media for a long time has kind of like correlated the two, suicide bombing and Muslims or Islam, which is, well, as we know, is completely false. And you know, these Islamophobe, atheist, Western supremacists like Sam Harris throws out these old and dusted talking points against Muslims. And by the way, people know that this link between suicide bombings and Muslims is completely false. It's just simply a completely false concept propagandized by Western mainstream media. Islam has absolutely no room for suicide and definitely not to kill innocent civilians. Anyway, you know, Sam Harris is making the case that suicide bombing is more dangerous than drone strikes, which is a joke to suggest in comparison to how sophisticated drone attacks are against intended and unintended targets, right? and, to justify nuclear attacks.
So this is very, very interesting here. You see, I think this was actually a priceless interaction, the back and forth. And in my view, Russell Brand definitely had the upper hand. Now, first and foremost, we could talk about suicide bombing, and we talk about the numbers of people, Muslim people, that actually believe in its legitimacy. We can talk about that on a mass level or on even on a scholarly level. How many people have given that legitimacy? In fact, this is not the rule, but the exception within the Islamic paradigm, both doctrinally, or you can say theologically, jurisprudentially, as well as sociologically, in terms of what Muslim people believe is legitimate or not legitimate action. That's one thing anyway. That's a conversation we can have another day.
Exactly. Now, I don't understand where Sam Harris get this idea that Islam and Muslims have this correlation with suicide bombing. One could say that, Sam Harris fell for the propaganda machine, who has been throwing out this type of rhetoric for quite some time now. However, I do think that Sam Harris is smarter than the average viewer, let's say, which means that he is deceptive in a way where, for the most part, he understands that Islam and Muslims don't have really anything to do with suicide bombing. In fact, as Mohammed Hijab suggests there, that the population clearly disregards such acts. So, I think Sam Harris is purposefully highlighting and exacerbating this idea of suicide bombings and Islam.
But the point being made here by Russell Brand is actually a very powerful point. And notice the reluctance of Sam Harris to take ownership of the fact that, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the two most devastating, we're talking about two of the most devastating detonations that have taken place probably in human history. Okay, and that was detonated by a country who as he mentioned, is got a secular ethic. Its constitutions, or the Constitution of America and the founding, the documents, all of them are secular documents underwritten by liberalism, social contractarianism, and so on and so forth. It's a liberal democracy for all intents and purposes. Yet they were the ones responsible for this kind of thing. Notice his reluctance to refer to that as terrorism. Why not?
I see you guys are enjoying my content, but you are not subscribed. Please consider subscribing and don't forget to like this video. Jazakallah khair.
I think that these kind of sort of theoretical tableaus are used to create a false hierarchy and a moral superiority by a dominant culture that subsequently uses thinking of this nature to underwrite the modern day colonization and subjugation of these people on a massive scale.
Right, so
and as barbaric and disgusting as 9/11 was, a daily 9/11 since then, so that a state system can perpetuate itself using rationalism, using comfortable means of executions that glide slyly by all white in the sky, is no better than 9/11 that it was a riposte to.
It is better. So we can talk. So you're invoking many things here which we should treat systematically, things like collateral damage. So you drop a bomb.
I don't even like that language, collateral damage.
It's a euphemism. No, it's a euphemism, but that's the word we use to talk about unintended people getting killed by bombs.
But what is that? Like when 87% of drone strikes result in fatalities.
The data here are hard to get our hands around as well.
People are
because
sort of
it's
saying
highly politicized. Yeah.
You see, whenever the argument is being made against the objective fact of secular violence, state violence, which has taken place in the 20th and 21st century on a scale that human history hasn't even seen before that. Human history, forget about religious states and whatever, theocratic states. We're talking about human history has never seen before. You notice that he wants to complicate the situation. Notice that Sam Harris is trying his best to try and muddy the waters. And I have to respect and give props to Russell Brand actually for making these distinctions. And it seems like throughout the interview he was very careful not to fall into what would be seen as an Orientalist discourse.
And what I also noted was that Russell Brand has this beautiful way in which he respectfully disagrees with Sam Harris via humor, which kind of makes Sam Harris look like the fool for the most part. And Russell Brand isn't a Muslim. He doesn't really have to defend Islam in that manner. However, I do think that Russell Brand, as I mentioned, is one who speaks against mainstream power, and he, for the most part, I could say that he is a truth seeker. So, the way in which he conducted himself there was quite admirable.
Having said all of this, Sam Harris would never discuss Islam with Muslim people. Have you ever seen Sam Harris discuss Islam with Muslim people? In fact, I've challenged him many times. I'm not even going to waste my breath.
I've never seen Sam Harris or other notable figures like himself, or at least some of them, have any sort of constructive conversation, dialogue, or even debate with traditional conservative Orthodox Muslims. This just goes to show the hypocrisy, discrepancies, and inconsistencies in their worldviews. And basically, falsehood is simply undefendable. And I think this is why, they scurry with their tails between their legs and perhaps not engage with the Muslim community. But I do long for that interaction between Mohammed Hijab and Sam Harris. Again, well done to Russell Brand in this interaction. And on that note, guys, Jazakallah khair for tuning in. Please don't forget to like, share, and if it is that you enjoy my content, definitely subscribe. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.